Good morning. My name is Joey O. I'm the pastor for administration here at the Loma Linda University Church. And on behalf of the entire team here, I just want to say how grateful you are that you've chosen to worship with us today. There's something powerful, almost miraculous that happens when the people of God worship together. And I think we've experienced that a little bit already. We want you to get connected. We want you to make Anthem your home. So if you haven't gotten connected yet, there's two very easy ways for you to do this. One is to drop by the Growing Disciples Center right outside the exit doors after worship. The second is to text Anthem to 55498. 55498. And if this is your first time here today, welcome. And we have a gift we'd like to give to you. And so if you text that Anthem to 55498, they will, and follow the instructions for first-time guests, they'll have a gift ready for you at the Growing Disciples Center in the back after worship service. Come out there, get to know us. We'd love to get to know you. We also believe that giving is an essential part of worship. And so we always provide an opportunity at all of our services for you to give. So there's two ways you can do that. One is to place your offerings in the baskets as they're passed around right now, or you can text Anthem to 55498 and select Give as your option. As that's going around and as you're doing that, I have a few announcements for you this morning. The first is Praxis 12 Weeks of Summer. You've heard about this already. Praxis is our young adult ministry geared to those 18 to 35. And throughout the summer, we've been doing different activities and programs to help our young adults build lifelong friendships. But today, they will be joining in on a church-wide program activity. It's our annual camp meeting, Drayson Fun Night. How many of you have ever attended a Drayson Fun Night before? Okay, there's some of you. If you haven't done this before, you owe it to yourself to come out. We open up the entire Drayson Center for free. Come and you can play basketball, volleyball, tennis. If you have to play pickleball, I guess you can play pickleball. I'm a tennis fan myself. There's swimming. There's a beach volleyball tournament. Pastor Doug will be selling his world-famous corn dogs as well as other foods. It all starts at 7 p.m. The gates open at 7 p.m. We'll have a worship at 7:15. And then there's going to be a short competition between the pastors and the teachers. Last year's we competed against them for a diving competition. This year we're going to have a giant inflatable animal relay race. And it's going to be just as ridiculous as it sounds. So come out and cheer your favorite pastor or teacher, if that's the way that you roll. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you come out tonight. Also, we want to encourage you to get involved. We believe that getting involved in your local church community is an essential part of growing as a disciple of Christ. There's different ways you can do that here at Anthem. You can join small groups. Small group season will be launching soon in the fall. We also have opportunities for you to get involved in many of our ministry teams, our prayer ministry team. We have our hospitality, our production team, our worship team. Another way to get involved in our larger church community is to get involved in UReach. UReach is our ministry that is outward focused, reaching out to our community. And they're looking for people to serve in our cafe, which supports our UReach ministry. If you can serve on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., we'd love for you to get connected to that. If you want to get involved in any of these things or other opportunities, make sure to drop by the Growing Disciples Center and they'll have more information for you. Community is also an essential part of this journey with Christ. And there are several members of our community who are hurting a lot today. Some of you know Daniel and Kathleen. They just came recently, less than a year ago, so that Kathleen could begin her PhD program here at Loma Linda. But Daniel suffered a stroke recently and is in the hospital with a coma. And so we're calling on you, their church family, their community, to support them. Support them with your prayers. Support them with your presence. Send them messages. encouraging words, drop by for a visit. And also, if you're so inclined, to support them financially. Like we said, they come from Chile, and so they don't really have the same family support network here that many people do. So some of their friends put together a GoFundMe page, and that's the QR code. If you'd like to support them, go ahead and scan that, go to the website, and you can donate to support Daniel and Kathleen. Show them a lot of love. Be God's hands and feet to them. Let us pray together. Our good and gracious God, it's during difficult times like these we realize more than ever how much we need you and we need each other. So we're grateful for this family, for this community. And we ask that you continue to be there with Daniel, Kathleen, with their entire family as they journey this difficult road. And allow us to be your hands and feet to show your love to them. As we continue on this worship service, we turn our eyes and our ears to you. Send to us your message through your servant Randy, so that our lives can be transformed by your words. This is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. We invite you now to open up your Bibles, to take out your notepads and your pens as we prepare to receive the Word of God.
Art involves so much focus and so much attention to detail. It allows me to view the world with much more focus and intentionality. I feel like at a young age, my parents have always taught me to appreciate art and be aware that everything is beautiful. It allowed me to see the world differently and to see art in almost everything. Because I'm looking at it and I have to be intentional what I put down, it makes me realize the intentionality put in every single thing. It really just takes me away into almost another dimension of just silence and solitude without it being lonely. My name is Evelyn Park-Karampis, and I sketch while I travel. I think when I initially began drawing, it was more of how I felt because other people told me that I did a good job, and it was very intrinsic. And then after a while, I thought that I liked it because other people told me that I liked it, but the more I stopped doing it just because I got busy, I was focusing on other things, the more I felt like I was missing something in my life, or I would go by and I just didn't feel like myself again. And so then I realized when I spent time to do those things, to sketch, even though I had a lot of other things to do, when I put time down to actually sketch, I felt full. I felt like my body was complete, and it sounds dramatic, but really there was something in that that really gave me life, and it really gave me insight into how it affects me. My process, I like to pick something that is well known in the area. So a lot of times when I'm traveling, I'll pick something that encapsulates the specific culture of that location. And for me, since I'm just sketching it, I really need to focus on the big picture and know what I want to put onto paper. It's just multitasking, getting the details while always stepping back and being like, okay, is the composition good? Is this what I like? Do I feel like this captures that area's culture? When I am sketching, a lot of times I have my headphones on, but I'm actually not listening to anything. I just like to focus on what I'm seeing. And a lot of times if it's quiet enough, I just like to be aware of the surroundings, kind of like capture the atmosphere. But for me, when I am looking and drawing, everything kind of just gets so quiet. It's kind of like my safe place. And again, art is something that fulfills me, and it's almost like it transports me into a place where it's just me sitting down. Time is not a thing. If other people are walking around me, I won't notice. And as I write and as I draw, I'm more focused on the details. Even though it's a daily thing, it's going to be hard, and that is part of it. And it's nice to know that for the times that you actually put in the work and the time and the intentionality, you will come out with something beautiful. Yeah, because when you're talking about like students, I'm like, okay, my kids always say like, well, ours is not as good as yours. I'm like, guys, I'm 27. Like I've had like 20, like I had 20 more years than you to practice. Like it's okay. Like you're gonna get good.
Good morning, Anthem. Good to see you this morning. Just a word about next week. Next week we'll be able to announce some of our steps forward. We want to assure you there's been a lot of work, a lot of prayer, a lot of conversation, listening, all the rest behind the scenes. So we look forward to being able to share that with you next week. So a comic artist named Grant Snyder drew a series of 9 panels in a cartoon that he titled The Clue to the Secret of Life. In the panels, there's a character of Snyder's who is looking for the secret to life. So early on, he's got his magnifying glass in his hand, no doubt a notebook, maybe some binoculars, and he's going to go out to explore the day to see if he can find out what the secret of life is. So he begins, and right away he can see the beautiful sky above him, cloudless, can see the sunshine dancing off the water. He continues through the day to see a V-shaped flock of Canada geese flying, honking as they go. Continues to see sunflowers dancing in the breeze. Later in the day, he sees a squirrel bushy-tailed and eager on a low branch, looking very inquisitively at the character. Finally, you know the kind of thing, how it ends, the moon in the branches of the trees, a beautiful moonlit night. At the end of it, he thinks he's achieved the secret of life. And so his character, Snyder's character, says the secret of life is this: pay attention. Pay attention to what's around you. Now, I don't know if you agree with Snyder's character or not, and if indeed that is a secret to life, but I will tell you this. If you're in a relationship of any kind, a relationship with another person, family or otherwise, if you're in a relationship with God, it will require, not suggest, but require you paying attention, at least some of the time. We know that paying attention can be challenging. There's evidence of that all around. It might be in the therapist's office where the couple is there and she has broken to him the news, just now, I'm leaving you, I'm done. And he's frantic now. He's saying to her, what are you talking about? How could you do this to me? Why didn't you give me some warning? And she says to him, I have tried to talk to you over and over and over and over again through all the... He said, wait. He says, this is the first time I've never heard you say... And the therapist says, I think that's the problem. You're not paying attention. Or the story, true story that I read, a nursing school, not the one here, but a nursing school, final exam for the quarter, and on the exam for the quarter, the teacher had placed this question with a full point value, had placed this question: what is the name of the woman who cleans our classroom every night? Students were upset. They came to her and said, what is this? How could you have, this matters, this might make a grade change in my grade. How could you ask us this? I've never even seen a woman around here. And she said, whoa, that's the problem. Pay attention. Or the man stands next to the police officer There's debris scattered across the highway, a bumper, plastic, metal, shards of glass. The police officer looks at him and said, "You hit that car. You rear-ended pretty hard. Were you texting?" He says, No, I wasn't. I don't text. No, I was looking for a song. But I didn't notice it suddenly. He said, wait, just a minute, sir. That's the problem. Pay attention. So I don't know. I don't know if Snyder's cartoon character is right, that the secret to life is indeed pay attention. You may have to decide that. But I will say this. I want to talk about 3 words today. 3 words for apprentices to Jesus. 3 words that deeply matter. And I want to take that as our first word, attention. Because just like I said a few moments ago, any kind of relationship is going to require at least certain regular intervals when we pay attention. Careful, close, undivided attention to one another. And if you take that out of the relationship sooner or later will be in trouble, guaranteed. And God's relationship with you and yours with God is the exact same. Attention is required. Now, right away, I think, and I suspect you think, innately, intuitively, that we're in trouble. Maybe in deep trouble. Because we recognize the condition of our world. We recognize that as important as attention may be, the actual truth of the matter is that we live in an increasingly distracted world. Distractions on every hand. Distractions of the proportions that we are at a different era, a different age in time compared to any time previous to this in history. Now, just in case there's someone here who's not quite convinced, and you're saying, well, I need some evidence of that. I'll give you 3 or 4 pieces of evidence. Now, I'll tell you the truth, on the proverbial cutting room floor of my office and trying to come up with what would give evidence to that, I left a mound of stuff. When I started looking, I was overwhelmed by the amount of material there is giving evidence to the distracted world in which we live. So just 3 or 4. Starting with Linda Stone. Linda Stone is a researcher for Microsoft. Linda Stone has begun talking about a phrase that we ought to pay attention to. She says we are now in an age and time when we have continual partial attention. Continual. In other words, this isn't going to disappear. This isn't just a phase that you might be going through in your life. She says what we're experiencing now is continual partial attention. Or consider Andy Crouch, author of such books as The Tech-Wise Life, with his daughter, a book called My Tech-Wise Family. So Andy and his daughter went about to do some research with families to try to get a feel for where people are with technology and family life and that sort of thing. And they found some things that they had suspected they would find, but they had one answer that they weren't expecting. It came when they were talking to adolescents and teenagers, talking to them about family life and technology and all the rest. They asked them, what would you like to be true in your family, with your parents and you all? What's the most important issue? What are you struggling with, etc.? Here was the most common answer they got. The adolescents and the teenagers said, we wish our parents would get off their devices. This is the kids saying that. Said that took us by surprise. We were expecting the parents to say, get off your devices, you're always on them. And there was evidence of that. What we didn't expect is the kids are saying that about mom and dad. It's a distracted world in which we live. Or consider these stats from Chris Stokel-Walker in Wired magazine. He's writing about TikTok. You might have heard of TikTok. Few stats here. Nearly 50% of users surveyed by TikTok said videos longer than a minute long were stressful. You know what bothered me about that? It's true for me too. It's like, it's too long. It's too long. I thought, I'm in trouble. A third of users watch videos online at double speed. This is too long. I'll zip right through this. The average TikTok user, of which there are 1 billion worldwide, spends an hour and 25 minutes on the app every day. The average TikTok user opens the app to watch videos 17 times a day. And finally, TikTok quoted a speed-watching young man in his 20s who said this, "It's not because I don't have time, but because I can't concentrate." And then he repeated himself, "I can't concentrate. That's why I keep watching it at higher speeds." A distracted world. Now, just in case you say, "Well, I'm almost there, but I'd still like a little more evidence," here comes the obligatory John Mark Comer quote. Been reading a lot of Comer lately. Listen to what Comer writes. We join him mid-sentence, and he's quoting the first president of Facebook. He writes, Sean Parker, the first president of Facebook, played by Justin Timberlake in the movie, now calls himself, imagine this, now calls himself a conscientious objector to social media. In an interview with Axios, he begrudgingly admitted, "God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. The thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them, was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever, and that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you more likes and comments. It's a social validation feedback loop, exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology." Now we go back to Comer's words. In moments like these, we see behind the curtain of what my friend Mark Sayers calls digital capitalism. Economists call it the attention economy. Harris calls it an arms race for people's attention. A company can get your money if and only if they can get your attention. Cue a terrifying trend. Our attention span is dropping with each passing year. In 2000, before the digital revolution, it was 12 seconds. So it's not like we exactly had a lot of wiggle room. But since it's dropped to 8 seconds, to put things in perspective, a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. Yes, that's right. We're losing to goldfish. Now, my intention is not to throw shade on social media or Facebook, TikTok, whatever. That's not the purpose of this. My purpose is to say we live in a distracted world, and we cannot escape the reality that reality, new to human history, is at the core of it. So, where do we go? If the truth is we need to pay attention, if we're going to experience life in the best and the healthiest way, if we're going to grow relationships in the most meaningful way, if we're going to be apprentices at the deepest level, we need to pay attention. And then immediately as we realize that, we realize, but I'm a distracted person because I live in a distracted world. Now what? What do I do about it? Well, I want to go to the words of Jesus, to read something Jesus said that just might help us as we step into this space. So our text is in Matthew's Gospel, the 6th chapter, Matthew chapter 6. You might recognize that is right at the heart of the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 5, 6, and 7 comprise the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew's Gospel. So in Matthew 6, we're getting right to the heart of it. The first part of Matthew 6, the first 18 verses, Jesus is focused on 3 acts of piety in ancient Judaism. Those 3 acts of piety were giving, prayer, and fasting. And as Jesus talks about these 3 acts of piety, he's not against those. But he is saying, the way a lot of you are doing it, especially the Pharisees, is more damaging than helpful. So he critiques that, and then he turns around and says, so do it this way. So our interest today is in that middle one, not on the giving one, not on the fasting one, but the one in the middle, on prayer. So that's the context. With that in mind, we go to Matthew chapter 6, verse 5. Jesus says, "And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Jesus is not talking here about physical or financial reward. He's talking about the kind of emotional and spiritual, I'll put reward in quotes, that comes in a positive way when we feel a deep sense of satisfaction, of blessing, of the grace of God. But he says those who are practicing prayer in these public kinds of showy ways, they're getting their reward in the appreciation and adulation and applause of others. That's their reward. And in fact, in the Greek, it uses a term from the marketplace, and it says that's their reward, and the term is stamped, paid in full. You got the rewards you're going to get. Everybody looked at you and said, wow, he's so spiritual. That's your reward. That's the end of it. But if you do it in an authentic and genuine way, the depth, the level of satisfaction and joy and grace in your life will be its own reward. We kind of catch some of this. I want to do what we did last week. I want to reread it to you, this time in Eugene Peterson's paraphrase, The Message, because his terminology is just closer to where we live. Peterson writes, and when you come before God, don't turn that into a theatrical production. All these people making a regular show out of their prayers, hoping for stardom. Do you think God sits in a box seat? Here's what I want you to do. Find a quiet, secluded place so you won't be tempted to role play before God. Just be there as simply and honestly as you can manage. The focus will shift from you to God, and you will begin to sense His grace. A totally different quality of experience. So to understand what he says here, we have to understand a little bit about how this functioned in the lives of the Pharisees. So there were certain prayer times when it was called upon to turn toward the temple and pray. Listen to this, written by Robert Mouse, New Testament scholar. According to Jewish custom, if you were in the streets at the hour of prayer, it was proper to stop, turn toward the temple, and pray. Apparently, the hypocrites would plan their day so as to be in some conspicuous place when it was time to pray. On busy street corners or in the square, they would lift their hands to God and display their devotion to all who were passing by. Let me look at my day. Okay, this is where I'm going, this is where I'm going. Okay, where's the hour of prayer? Okay, I got to be on First Street here, and I got to be on Main Street here. And there they were. Stop, raise their hands, and begin to pray. Now me, if I ran into that, that's just irritating. But not in that world. In that world, it was like, wow, that's a very religious person. And Jesus says, that's not prayer at all. I want to get our third word from Peterson's paraphrase, because he says, if you pray authentically and genuinely before God, this is what will happen. He says, your focus will shift from yourself to God, and you will begin to experience His grace. The focus will shift. So, we know we need attention, to pay attention in all kinds of settings, especially relational ones. Every relationship requires, remember, regular intervals of undivided, focused attention. So we know that, but we know our world is so distracted that we're in these conversations and we're constantly checking our phones, and the other person's like, what am I, chopped liver? What's going on there? Because what we're saying, when we have that there is, this is more important than you. I'm distracted. What was it that Linda Stone said? Continual partial attention. So this becomes then the focus needed. Now, one of the things that strikes me about what Jesus says here is that it doesn't fit so neatly in our world. We don't tend to pace around and stop at certain times, raise our hands and pray. But there is something we do that may be inhibiting to the living of a healthy emotional and spiritual life. And that is obsessive posting. I'm not talking about put up our wedding pictures, birthday pictures, or like this morning, somebody from our community who's suffering profoundly. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I just got in the car and now I'm on the freeway and I'm almost to work and I got some coffee. And it's like, okay. There is a need within us from our youngest years to be witnessed, to be seen. If you've been in a pool recently with a family of the kids, you've seen it. Kids on the diving board, what are they saying? Mommy, 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 watch me, watch me. And they run and they jump off. Next time they're up, daddy, 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 watch me, watch me. And you're sitting over there thinking, kid, he's already seen you 3 times. That's enough of that. But it just keeps on. Watch me, watch. We need to be witnessed. It validates who we are, our existence. A 30-something blogger named Sky Jethani talked about how obsessive posting had affected him until one day he said, I woke up and suddenly realized I have someone who witnesses my life. And that's God. He witnesses my life every day. And he said, when I realized that, my need to constantly, obsessively post declined. I wonder if Jesus, were he to live in our day, might put it in a different context in terms of saying, shift your focus from you to God, and the sense of grace in your life will grow. Now the question is, how do we do this? We want to focus in a distracted world. That becomes inordinately difficult. How do we do it? I want to suggest 3 things. The first thing I want to suggest is find a quiet place. Find a quiet place. Isn't that what Jesus says after all? In fact, listen to New Testament scholar Karen Sapio as she writes about the language Jesus uses in these verses. Jesus uses hyperbolic language to urge his hearers to go to great lengths to ensure that their private acts of devotions are directed to God alone. They are to go into their tamion and shut the door. This word is translated in various places as an inner room, pantry, or closet. That is, a room without windows or doors that would open to the street. Prayer in such a room would shield the one praying from even accidental observation by the general public. So first thing Jesus is saying is essentially find a quiet place. Again, if Jesus were talking to us as citizens of 21st century Loma Linda, I think he might say something a little bit different. He might still say, find a quiet place. That's central. There are 2 essential quiet places in my life, one at home and one at work, where some of the most meaningful times of my day and some of the deeply meaningful times of my life are spent. I would encourage you to find that in your life. But there's something even deeper than that. We could go into a tamion, to a closet, to a room with no windows or doors to pray, and we could take a world of distraction in our pockets with us. It's about this big. And we can be in the most silent of rooms and utterly destroy it by distractions. Notifications. Oh, I got to make the car payment. Oh, this, and pretty soon we're all over the place. You're adults. You need to choose what you're going to do. One of the things I do is I use that time to charge my phone. I still have a challenge because part of what I read on my iPad. That's a challenge. Turn off notifications. Ignore them. However you do it, finding a quiet place in our day and time isn't merely about a physical space. It's about a digital space as well. But if you're going to focus and base that on Jesus' words here, I think this is key. Find a quiet place. Secondly, focus on your good God. Focus on your good God. Did you notice Evelyn in the video? One of the first things she said as the video opened, and these are my words describing what she said, was if you're going to be a good artist, even a great artist, you have to learn to pay attention, to focus, to notice the world around you. Because as you do, all kinds of things begin to emerge that you hadn't noticed before. And suddenly there is much fuel, much fodder for the fire to say, okay, this now can become a part of my artwork. That kind of focus is required. But in this passage, Jesus specifically uses a term for God, calls God Father. Now that's a loaded term for many. I am eternally grateful that for me, Father and Mother are profoundly cherished terms. But I realize that is not the case for all. So I want to encourage you to remember why Jesus is using that terminology. He's using that terminology primarily because he's probably trying to communicate two things if we look at his overall teaching. The first thing he's trying to communicate is intimacy. He wants to, in other words, say, I want you to focus on a God who yearns for, desires intimacy with you. Desires to be so deeply a part of your life that he transforms and changes you as his apprentice. He's talking about intimacy. The other thing he's talking about is care. Even in this very sermon, do you think 2 sparrows that are sold for a farthing will fall to the ground without your Father's notice? It's his way of saying God cares about every aspect of your life. So if that particular term is problematic, just remember the focus on your good God is a focus on the divine being who is for you, not against you, who wants intimacy and relationship with you, who promises to walk with you through the ups and the downs, the twists, the turns, the light, the dark, everything that comes. So when you're there, turn your focus to that kind of God. One of the reasons it's so hard to be in the prayer closet, to use this terminology, is that for many of us, when we get there, suddenly all this stuff starts coming up in us. Our mind starts racing, and we can't take the silence. And so we start looking for distractions. If that happens, if anxiety arises, or fear, or guilt, just keep bringing that to God. God, I'm feeling all kind of guilt, and I'm just clinging to the fact that you are a forgiving God. God, I have all kinds of anxiousness. I'm clinging to the fact that I don't go into this alone. God, I have, and just keep focusing on the good God who wants intimacy with you and cares enough to walk with you every day. We have to have times of attention for healthy relationships in a distracted world that is inordinately difficult. So focus. We do that by finding a quiet place, by focusing on a good God. And then the third thing I would say is filter nothing. Filter nothing. I want to read the rest of that passage, just 2 more verses, because we didn't read the entire part up to where Jesus gives the Lord's Prayer. I want to read you the next 2 verses. This is what he says. And when you pray, do not keep babbling like the pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. If I could paraphrase Jesus, what he is saying is, don't think that your prayers are constituted of how well or how correctly you word things. That's not what prayer is, he's saying. I mean, even for us, if you were invited up here to give the public prayer for Anthem here, you would probably, just like I do, think it through and make sure I have some decent wording and it'll say what I want to say and that I don't walk off and you're saying, what was that? You know, we don't want to look bad. And that's not necessarily wrong, but that cannot be what constitutes our prayer lives. When it comes to genuine prayer, in the closet alone, focusing on your good God, filter nothing. Lay it all out there before him. If you want examples of that, go to the Psalms. The psalmists are unbelievable. They are unbelievable in what they will say to God. I've thought at times, if I prayed a prayer like that, it would probably be my swan song prayer. Because what they do is they walk out here and they pray and they say, God, we're angry at you. You're going to sit up there all day and be quiet? What are you doing when all these people are overrunning our country? We haven't done anything to deserve this. You defending the guilty? Do you not even care, for heaven's sakes? Thank you. Amen. Like, whoa, what was that? Well, May not be the best prayer for the public space, but in your prayer closet, filter nothing. That's prayer. The point of your prayer is not to have a point, it's just to have your life before God. That's what he's calling us to. That's how we focus on God. Those times of focus, of paying attention, are integral to the life of the apprentice. We cannot overlook them. So, this week, I went into my closet at my home office and dug around some boxes for a bit, and I found it. It's a little notebook, loose leaf notebook. Some of the pages have nothing on them. Some do. I was pretty sure it was there, but I hadn't looked in years. I've had this notebook for a long time. To be precise, about 50 years. I was 2. No. So I was looking through this notebook, and it had some things that I remembered. This was way pre-Google World, pre-Apple Music, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. And so I had in here written a lot of song lyrics. I can remember at that time the song came on radio, you were frantically writing, you know when it's going to play again. So I have a whole lot of song lyrics, other things in this. That wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for what was on the first 2 pages. It's a note from my brother John. My brother's 4 years older than I am. I always idolized my brother. He was an unusually gifted athlete, exceptional athlete. I always wanted to be that and never quite made it. But John kind of mentored me and helped me. And he was very protective, which meant a lot to me. So at this time, we were living as a family in Guadalajara, Mexico. And while we were there, John left, came back to the States for college. And I missed him profoundly. You know, I was about 14 probably. He was about 18. So I cried when he left. You know, 14-year-old boys don't cry with other people around. So I went into his room and cried. He came to visit us into his college time, came one time, and he was still helping me. One of the things he kept emphasizing to me is, Rand, this was catching football, you got to watch the ball into your hands. Don't just look up and hope it hits them. You got to watch it all the way. That's what you got to do if you're going to catch well. Stuff like that. So when he left to come back to the States, I went into my room, and this little notebook was on the pillow with this note. Dear Randy, just a note to let you know how much I enjoyed being down here. Thanks for going out to the Huicholes with me. My dad had a ministry to the Huichol Indian tribe. They were a forgotten tribe. Only way to get there was about a week by foot or horseback or fly. And we had gone out there to hike into a new place where they had built an airstrip to make sure it was safe to land on. Thanks for going out to the Huicholes with me. You sure did good hiking over that mountain. I really enjoyed playing football with you. You can really play. He didn't always tell the truth. Remember to watch that ball into your hands. That sentence could be one word long. Focus. Keep in shape and you'll be able to be a lot better player than a lot of your friends when you go back to the States. I'll send you some stuff about the Super Bowl if I can. I guess I'll see you soon, though, a couple of months. This is one kid writing to another. Bye, and remember that Jesus is coming soon. And then he came back to earth. Don't get too many girlfriends or you'll pass me up. I have to tell you this. I am not saying this in the sanctuary, so yeah. If you quote me on this, I'm going to say, that wasn't me. When I got to college, he said to me, you got a reputation to live up to. I said, what's that? He said, when I went to school there, I was such a good kisser. The women call me Oral Roberts. I said, your legacy's safe. Don't worry. See you soon. Your brother, John. It's very precious to me because I know our relationship. It was a relationship where he taught me so many things, mentored me in so many ways. And to just think back and think, focus. That's good wisdom for catching the football, for having good relationships, for driving safely, for being an apprentice. But in a distracted world, we need some help. So find a quiet place. Focus on your good God and filter nothing from your prayers. And it could be that you'll discover that your ability to sense, experience, and see God in your life will become more and more and more clear. And may God bless you.